Welcome to Marketing Over Coffee. I'm John Wall.
I'm Christopher Penn.
And we're very happy to be here as part of Dreamforce. We've invited a special guest here. We normally do this show on a weekly basis, talk about marketing and technology.
In a donut shop. And
here we are at a huge
in the Moscone
show,
Center.
which is just fantastic. It's so funny too, numbers going up. And when I left, I had heard that they were talking about 70,000 showing up. And every day it's continually gone up. I think it was 2.5 million I heard this morning was the total. It's just
1 billion people are here.
It's completely over the top. But 95,000 is the number that I've heard, so it's just been fantastic. And of course the big news for us is Marketing Cloud. Salesforce for years being the CRM champion and leading in the cloud. But now actually moving into it's kind of cool too, because I want to get your take on this, it being the first full-fledged marketing automation enterprise suite. Up until now, it's always been point solutions for the marketing department. They need email, or they need search, or they need something along those lines. But now you've actually got Salesforce stepping up and doing a whole package end-to-end that the enterprise can get.
No, though. I mean, if you think about it, Marketing Cloud is very much about social. I mean, that's kind of what Mark Benioff, the CEO, was talking about. It's all social this, social that. There's actually a whole bunch of pieces that are not in it that they've, I guess, left out so that the third-party folks, like everything you see back here, search, pay-per-click, outside of what Buddy Media's functionality does, email marketing, all that stuff. But I think the stealth play that a lot of folks don't realize is more that it's going to really help with retention. Being able to tune into what people are saying. I mean, Dave Thomas has his social command center on the other side of the venue, and it looks like a very, very shipper NASA controls. Like it's like NASA done by interior designers. That being able to pull in your social data and then be able to deal with what customers are actually talking about and get a bigger picture of what's going on, I think is probably more interesting than just hey, let's be social, because like on the panel we were talking about on Tuesday, it's just saying, hey, we're going to be social, let's try and find influencers and market. Kind of sort of works, but not really. And a lot of folks would love it too, because you can automate that. But it's no better or worse than direct mail in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's true. It is funny you mentioned the command center there. I mean, it's just amazing. I totally picture that out of 24. We need Jack Bauer to come running through and yelling about dropping your weapon, because it's just amazing to have. But you can totally see when an enterprise gets to that size where they've got literally thousands of tweets or Facebook posts going out on an hourly basis, or even every 15 minutes, you need to monitor at that level. So it's just an amazing undertaking to come in and take that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the other thing that's really important with it is that it's not marketing automation. It's not. It brings in data and gets you data faster, and theoretically, slices and dices. But you still need hearts and brains, of human beings actually running it. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions for people talking to vendors and stuff like, oh, I just push the easy button and social media is done. It does not work like that, because these are humans on the other side of the machine.
Right. Well, and we talked about this many times, in that, again, there's the human factor and the fact that you don't just scale it up. It really comes down to paradigms, because right now social is so new, we're just layering what we understood previously on top of it. The classic story of that is the late 90s. There was literally like a yellow pages for the web, like a 600-page book. And this thing, it went through like 12 editions, because it wasn't until there was this complete revolution, people understood that, hey, why don't we just type in to the web to get that?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing here with social. We were talking about this earlier, that it's it's going to evolve and move forward, and it's not going to be the same thing, but just with social layered on top. Social is going to be baked in right to the center of it. I think that's what kind of blew me away at the keynote, when they were talking about seeing HubSpot over in the work section, breaking the whole cycle down. And that's, then you get to the big revolution of it all. It's literally changing the way we work across the board.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be different. Departments are going to be torn apart. The old marketing department of running the ads and schmoozing the network executives is just exploded, and it's going to move on.
I think the biggest nice little nugget to take away from one of the keynotes was, I think it was one of the Coca-Cola execs said it. It said that one-to-one communications between the brand and the consumer, that's just table stakes now. It's not a revolution to anyone to say, oh, I can talk to this company and they'll talk back to me. So the idea that social is something new and shiny, it's not for the consumer anymore. So that's just the price to get into the forum without actually doing something really, really interesting. Now, what was interesting was Virgin America, the airline, has this ridiculously head-melting implementation of chatter, where they can identify people on a flight who are going to be delayed, and then then using the sales CRM identify who on that flight is high value, like Platinum Ultra, 5 million points, and probably has Richard Branson's phone number, and then from there reroute them, and then push data to the actual seat, the little display seat, saying, "Hey, Bob, your flight's been rerouted. Here's the map. Sorry about the trouble. Here's a donut," kind of thing. And just being able to push data back like that at the individual level, if the other airlines don't figure out how to do that, they're cooked.
Right, yeah, you're going to get stuck. And it's so funny, too, the thing that cracked me up was looking at the reverse side of that, the other end, where, okay, so I had my first flight on Virgin coming out here for this trip, it hasn't worked out with the cities I go through, but you could totally see the same thing of, okay, there's a delay with the flight, there's a problem, and they're going to say, oh, yeah, Mr. Wall, we know you were booked today, but you with your 50 points, you're going to fly on Tuesday. Why don't you just go, pick up your bag and move on? So it can go both ways and run. But there's two major components to that. One is having checkpoints in your business process, so that actually trigger social media messaging.
Right.
We've seen that a number of times here, where something happens or an engine turbine fails or something, and it literally goes into chatter, and the whole enterprise knows what's going on real time. Yeah. And not only is it people going through the business process, but even machine-to-machine communication too. Literally having your phone system talk to other enterprise appliances to make.
I can't wait to see some of the chatter from some of the Boeing engines, because my brother works at Boeing in Seattle, and they do things like, okay, let's put like a side of beef into the engine just to see what happens, because one of the strangest things that the airline has seen is they call it wildlife strikes. And the largest animal that the FAA has recorded was actually a bison entered the turbine of a plane. So I can see the chatter update says bison.
Right, but this is terrible. I mean, we're trying to stick with enterprise stuff, but that's like the oldest joke in the book, the turkey and the jet engine.
Yep.
They fire the turkey through, and it's been destroying the engine of the plane every time, and then they send the email back, thaw the turkey. That would be the.
It works with frozen turkeys now.
All right, there you go, folks. Big news from Dreamforce. Your plane is safe from a frozen turkey. That's about all you need to know. Back to
useful things.
Back to useful information. So how about one other thing on the show floor here is gamification. I think has picked up a lot of steam. It's very interesting. A bunch of vendors on that front. What's your opinion on that now? Where are you at?
So, gamification has taken off specifically because we have really short attention spans, and the idea of the little Warcraft style merit badge popping up when you show up to work and get the 15th coffee out of the machine. It makes sense because that's kind of how the workforce is evolving. That's how work is evolving, where it's no longer you just show up and grind away, and in 20 years you get a little gold baseball for your desk or something like that. But it's not right for a lot of tasks. I mean, there's a reason why you play World of Warcraft to play. And you don't use a World of Warcraft interface to take out the trash or something like that. So if you make something too gamified, I suspect you'll actually sort of detract from your employees' attention spans, because they'll be almost waiting for what's the next random thing that's going to flash on my screen and distract me from the previous work I was doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's always very important to try and get it integrated to the business process, and anytime you're trying to monkey with behavior,
right,
you're not going to, you're going to have unintended results. You're not going to know what you're really going to get out of it. Because it's funny, even thankfully, Dan Patrick, you can't see my pants behind the desk here, but I'm wearing my crazy plaid pants.
John is wearing pants.
And I am wearing pants, fear not. But the big deal is we've always used this as an icebreaker, as an exhibitor, because when people want to come to the booth to talk to you, it breaks through. Right. But I saw the dark side of it here too, where I'm trying to get across the floor, without getting grabbed, and pretty much, every 5 minutes somebody wants to talk to you. And that's everything you do on the marketing front. You've got to worry about that there's no substitute for field testing. That's really the big message with that.
Now, you can use gamification with the end user, like the customer or the prospect. There is some value in that, particularly if you're trying to keep the person engaged. Because, we've talked about that for years, about saying, okay, if you have a reasonably good marketing automation system or a CRM, you can say, okay, hey, thanks for reading like the 500th email we've sent you. Here's a cookie, and just having a reward structure built in that is not reliant on the purchase process. Obviously, the purchase can be that you can get like a giant trophy on screen, still all pixels, but there is, I think, a lot of value in that because the consumer's attention span is getting like this big. So yeah, gamification there makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I can totally see the whole frequent flyer program on steroids. It's not just get enough miles and now you get the free trip. You can completely go into, it's just completely limitless. In fact, you could even picture an exchange where you could, go in and buy other things from other vendors when you just reach certain checkpoints.
Yeah.
So there's a whole marketplace that could evolve out of that. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, so we'll have to see how that goes. All right, so we're talking about gamification, but then let's flip it over. It still seems like email is the 900-pound giant. I mean, for all the talk of social and email, dying, it's like, here we go, bang, there's Marketo on the corner, I see Eloqua, I see, at least 2 or 3 other vendors, in the front row. They're the big dogs.
Yeah.
So, where is email dead yet?
Email still not dead. This just in. Email is not going away anytime soon, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, email is not owned by anyone. As much as Google or Yahoo or Hotmail would love to say, hey, we now control the world's email, it's not true. Facebook is owned by someone. And Facebook can take away everything that you've built like that. Twitter, exactly the same way. Any social network, these are not public utilities. These are not services in which they're paid for by taxpayers. These are private companies, and you operate on them at their discretion. Your email list is yours. However little or often you choose to use it, it's still your asset that you control. And it is not reliant on Twitter being functional or Facebook being functional in order for you to get stuff done. But it's also the only mechanism that still effectively pushes to a lot of people. Someone has to see your tweet or your Facebook post or your blog post or your mention or whatever. You're broadcasting when you publish information, but someone still has to see it. You have to catch their attention, and not everyone is on Twitter 24/7. There's a few people, and they need mental help, but with email, you can still push out to the consumer, to whoever the end user is, and say, hey, John, pay attention. We're going to Dreamforce. And as much as some social folks like to say, oh well, open rates have been slowly declining and stuff like that. Actually, depending on how good you are at email, the reverse may be true.
Yeah, right. It's that's the first limiting factor. It's kind of, if you can perform on that front,
right,
you're geared to go. And we've talked ad nauseum. There's always the distraction of the shiny new object,
right,
but the true approach is pick off the first channel and be excellent at it, so that you're getting your full return.
Right.
It's really that last 10% that puts you well above the pack.
More than that, though, and this is where I think the stealth thing that's missing from all this here is, it's not about social or email or search or whatever. It is all of that together. It's like the old 80s breakfast cereal commercials. It's a part of a nutritious breakfast, and actually the kids just really want the bowl of sugar bombs, but the parent, if they're responsible, have the actual.
You put the toast there, and that makes all the difference.
The toast, right. But email plus social plus search plus pay-per-click plus direct media buys plus PR, and so that all that synergizes and creates something that's bigger than the sum of its parts. And if people figure that out, and if vendors figure that out, they will crush whoever is still selling single serving solutions. Right.
Well, yeah. So we loop back again to the full enterprise solution.
Yeah.
Another thing too that has blown me away with this, the way it came about. It's great because prior to the rise of the cloud, you had all the big iron enterprises doing CRM and financial software and all this kind of stuff. And by starting with cloud-based web stuff that actually appeals more to small and medium business that don't have the IT infrastructures, that was the stealth play for them. They literally came in and started adding features, but then suddenly you reach this tipping point where some huge company, you get the Dells or the Burberrys or whoever that are like, hey, we would like that too.
Right.
And now suddenly it's like, bang, the switch flips on, and there's 90,000 people here in San Francisco.
90,000 people in San Francisco.
Kind of, the way it all spins up.
Yeah. So speaking of stuff, you have a new work available for the Salesforce folks who want to learn more on Salesforce. Want to talk about the book?
Very excited. It was fantastic. As soon as we found out we'd been invited over here, I held off on book launch, B2B Marketing Confessions. My first book is out and available today on Amazon, and I don't know, Dreamforce to me, this is like the Super Bowl and summer camp of business. It's just everything rolled up. So I'm really happy to have the chance to roll it out here.
So what's in the book?
Where does it go? It's funny, again, we saw with the keynotes, I was so excited to see, instead of talking about point solutions, you drag it back to the main principles of what the business does. And that's the whole idea. My whole premise is that there's 4 chunks to the business. You have product marketing at the core, which is always interesting because there's the irony there of the better you design the product, the less marketing you do downstream.
Right.
It literally gets to the point where if you have a product like a Google, you never even need to advertise.
Right.
It spreads virally and is on fire. But so you've got the product marketing first there, basically just the create, figure out what you're going to do. Second stage is telling the story. That's the bigger, general term for demand gen, was what we would call it, as from the marketing side. Third is sales. It's great if you tell your story and you got a product, but it's not great until somebody gives you money for it.
Right.
Nothing happens till the sale happens. And then fourth is customer lifecycle, customer service. And for some organizations, you need to end lifecycle. You literally need to think that after 3 years, we're no longer getting, the customer's going to move on to something else,
right,
or the product will eclipse. But so those 4 checkpoints, and it's just, I've been in the startup game, done 4 other companies and seen all kinds of different stuff, and so this is just all tips and tricks and tactics. The big thing for me was it's a topical book. If you have to put together a marketing strategy and you're not really sure where to start, this gives you the recipe.
Right.
It doesn't give you the answers, but at least you'll have a plan. And that's the other sad point. I'm not expecting this to ever sell, like a 4-hour work week, one of those deals. But the big win for me is if 2 years from now, just one person comes back and says, hey, we got our game together with this and it works. So
excellent.
That's very excited about that. That's the big push for me. So available on Amazon.com and wherever fine books are sold. But enough, again, the shameless self-promotion. Digging into just pure Salesforce stuff, actually, and that is something that I spent a lot of time covering, but just a lot of the new functionality over the past year as far as cross filters, joins, bucket reports, all that stuff has been fantastic for 4 years ago, you used to have to kind of take Salesforce and export all your data and play with it and massage it to get where you want to go. But now, by having that stuff baked right into the reports, it's great because you put together a dashboard for your sales guys, so every morning they just check in, they see what's going on the front, what leads are in, and you can kind of drive your performance right to the bottom line. And it's great to finally have some automation at that friction point where the leads are passed from sales to marketing.
Yeah.
That is just huge because that's the biggest point of failure. In fact, I had seen some studies recently talking about, it doesn't even matter if the marketing department answers to sales or they have if the marketing department answers to the COO.
Right.
It's if that transition between the two works, that's the critical success factor.
I think probably the biggest problem that a lot of companies have, and certainly a lot of sales managers have, is the realization that sales and marketing and advertising and PR and customer service, they're actually not separate from in the mind of the customer. They're not separate. It's a spectrum of communication where I'm aware of you, I'm talking to you, I'm interested in you. Let's do some business. I've got your product, and this thing's fell off and killed 8 people, and it's toxic spill on the highway. Man, let's clean it up. It's a communications continuum. It's only because we are stuck in in order to scale, we have to slice these things up that it becomes these separate disciplines. And if we eventually get marketing automation systems and CRMs and all these things and advertising systems on the very far front end and service on the very back end, if it's all one continuum, if you're good at it, the customer will be a lot happier and you will lose far fewer of them. If you're really bad at it, well, it'd be nice knowing.
All right, that sounds good. We're getting to wrap up a little bit here, but I did have just on the way out, we were talking about a Gartner report that had 2 Fortune 500 brands being set up for failure fake social networking reviews. So we'll be covering that. It'll come up for next week. We'll get ready to roll that. How about anything else on the way out here? What do you got to get done at the show here before you go?
On the way out, I mean, the big thing and I would encourage this for everyone who is actually at the show, please make sure you follow up. If there's a ball to be dropped among the 95,000 people here, it's that they're not going to follow up. The business cards are going to get put in the wash, or the dog's going to eat them, or something like that. If you've got any kind of tool like Evernote or Card Munch from LinkedIn, scan these things the moment you're on the plane, or in the car, or whatever. Get it into a CRM of any kind. Even just an Excel spreadsheet, and actually do the follow-up so that the thousands of dollars that you spent to come here don't go completely to waste.
All right. That sounds good. That's going to do it for us today. So we're wrapping up. I guess we've been told that they're finishing up. They're going to be heading over to the plaza. The escalator. So you want to check that over there. And if you want to catch up with us every week, we'll see you at marketingovercoffee.com.